Good evening, ladies. Welcome to Reboot TV and Tuesday Night Live. This is June 22nd. The nights are already getting shorter. Last night was the longest night of the year. Tonight, our topic is going to be about honoring your hunger. And there's several different ways people look at this. I come at taking a look at hunger in a way of, as a health coach, not only for myself and how am I feeling, am I hungry, checking in with myself. That's one way to think of it, but I have a whole interesting idea to share with you about honoring hunger and what that means, and really understanding where hunger comes from, how to deal with it, how skewed it's gotten over the years and generations with us as modern humans. And just kind of taking a look at that, because mastering food freedom and being able to simply enjoy food, understand what's good for us, feel nourished and satiated and happy with what we've eaten. I mean, that's a pretty amazing thing to have happen. To conquer a lot of the insanity that I learned about food was quite freeing for me. It was wonderful, and it's something that I help my clients do, and something that I hope in sharing a little bit of this evening will help you also find some of that. And if you find any of it interesting, go ahead and comment. Even if you're watching in replay, I will answer any questions that are left in the comments. I will answer it. So along the way, I may say, comment me if this sounds like me, or raise your hand or something. And just like if you're on a webinar or something, just answer. If you're on replay, you can still put comments in there, and I will get back to you on any comments or questions that you have. Okay? So let's get going. If you will accept my apologies, I am going to be also taking a look at some notes that I have to make sure that, speaking of honoring your time and making the best use of it, and getting to the point of what I wanted to share with you. So, honoring hunger is one of those new phrases that's out there that people have looked at, and there are several different health coaches and people in the health industry that use it in different ways, but this is how I think about honoring hunger and everything that I learned about it. And so what do we say? Like, why do we eat? Well, we eat because we're hungry. If a kid says, hey mom, why do we eat? We eat because we're hungry. But it's a very basic thing. You eat, you're hungry. Then you go and eat something. But it's also very complex, and it's beyond just the hormonal cues that can drive us to eat. It's the very essence of the human mind, which is all about higher order thinking and social references and social cues and self-organization and time, that we've tracked time. We're the only creatures who track time. And that whole nature of us being more complex creatures has also complicated our entire story of how we eat. We don't eat as instinctively as the other mammals or non-mammals on the planet. The other creatures on the planet, they eat because they're hungry, straight up hormonal reason, and they eat. We have a lot of other reasons why we eat. And if you're like me and you're someone who's had to lose a lot of weight in your life, it becomes a source of guilt. It becomes a source of feeling bad about yourself, that maybe you didn't eat what you were supposed to eat, or the diet industry keeps changing what you're supposed to eat and what's healthy. You think you're following the rules, and all of a sudden it's something complicated than it needs to be. So the human instinct is far stronger than we give it credit for, much more so than we've ever estimated. The environmental inputs that I talked about really skew the marching orders that our hormones give us, and convince us even to binge eat when we're not hungry, like getting up out of bed in the middle of the night and going and having a snack or a whole meal right in the middle of the night, when we're clearly not biologically hungry. And often we eat when we're not even conscious of eating. I had one client say, I was 3/4 of the way through a graham cracker before I even know I'd eaten it. It becomes just so like you're just eating because it's there. Why did you do it? Because it's there. You know, you went, there was a whole buffet and you just had it because you're there. But there's a lot of reasons why we eat. We're going to be taking a look at a lot of those cues that we get. So the simplest of motivations can be taken over by unconscious or subconscious eating. So let's start with a little biology about why we eat. We all know there are biological imperatives that all creatures on the planet have, and that is to procreate and to eat. Even plants have to grow seeds, and they have to have the right kind of minerals in the earth, and they have to, you can't plant a fern in sand, you know, that you have to have the right kind of food for plant food. You know, all of us are pouring Miracle Grow or worm castings or whatever it is on our vegetable gardens right now this summer. And we have to feed it, and it has to have water, it has to have sunshine, it has to consume things, and the biological imperative of a plant is to produce a seed and duplicate itself. Everything from plants and bugs to us as humans all have that compulsion. So that's pretty basic. But that's the nature of our survival as a species. But the hormonal impulses that start in the brain are super powerful and control us, and those should take over and be the reason why we eat. So there's a lot of different hormones and hormonic sequences that fire off that get us hungry and tell us when we're full, tell us to store fat or to burn fat. I mean, there's all kinds of little men with levers up in our brain that are telling us what to do when it comes to food. First, there's something called ghrelin, kind of like gremlin, that's how I remember it, and it tells you to be hungry. And it doesn't always tell you to be hungry when you're actually biologically hungry. Ghrelin can kick in after you've had cortisol, which is the stress hormone, kick in because you've had something stressful going on. So cortisol says she'll eat something and she'll feel better. Eat something, you'll feel better. My mom constantly, eat something, you'll feel better. I grew up with that. So you had a great day. You're celebrating your birthday. My birthday was this weekend. Eat something, you're celebrating. Oh, just have a piece of cake, you're celebrating. You know, there's all of those imperatives, you know, that override the ghrelin. But cortisol says you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, or there's times of famine, say. And, you know, think of cavemen, all right? It's times of famine. And your body goes into fight or flight mode. And it tells your body you're in fight or flight mode. Cortisol fires off. All kinds of stress hormones fire off. Your serotonin gets out of whack and everything. And tells the body, okay, got to store up some fat because we might need it for fuel. We might need some long-burning fat sources. So let's store some fat. Let's make some carbohydrates. You know, if you don't eat carbohydrates, your body still makes it through gluconeogenesis and the burning of sugar or glycogen stores in your liver. So even if you don't eat carbs, if you're abstaining from carbs, you're like, I'm not eating carbs. I don't know where these high sugar levels are coming from. It's because your body makes it. And your body makes it because it thinks it needs it to run from the saber-toothed tiger because you're in fight or flight or stress mode. And so there's that hormonal path. But there's also something called leptin, which is supposed to kick in, which is the satiety hormone that says, you've had enough. You can step away. You couldn't possibly eat another bite. And the reason why carbohydrates are so easy to overeat, leptin rarely kicks in when you're eating carbohydrates. You have to eat your body weight in donuts before it says stop. It's because it's cheap, wonderful fuel that your body really enjoys, like a party. It's like, woohoo, great, easy fuel. Get me more of that. I want more of that. Get me more of that. Go get some more. I want some more. And then you get hangry, hungry, angry, and you go on the prowl for more carbohydrates. when in fact, if you've ever noticed, it's really hard, for instance, to overeat way too much protein. If you're having a really good fatty ribeye on the bone, yumbo, right? You can't eat 45 pounds of that. You can't eat your body weight like in carbs. You can't, stuff yourself for hours through a movie just eating steaks. That would be hysterical to see someone doing that. But you can't do that like you can with carbohydrates. And one of the reasons is the satiety level of fatty meats is very high. It's so nutrient dense. And the types of omega-3 fats that you get from the saturated fats that are in grass-fed and finished beef, for instance, feed you so well, and you're so nourished and are so satiating with the fat content and everything that you're just like, oh, I can't have any. You're just like, I can't have any more. I can't have any more. You push away when you've had tons of meat. Did you ever notice that? Yeah, that happens. That's satiety. That's the sense that you've had enough to eat, but it rarely happens with carbs, unfortunately. But that's because it's a cheap source of fuel that it wants to use. So it will win if you let it, but if you deny it carbohydrates long enough, it'll give up the ghost and it will finally start. And fat it burns for a much longer time. It's much longer burning fuel. And then you're able to stay full much longer because you're full, because it's lasted that amount of time. So, what does it mean when your impulses are off? Well, why are they off? Well, in simpler times, our lives were simpler. Your life at one point, a human on this planet, you at one time were into procreation and eating, that you had to survive. And you had to procreate and you had to eat to survive. Just like everything from bugs and plants to humans, we talked about. And you were like that at one point. But things are not so simple anymore. We took time constructs and we put it on things. And during the Industrial Revolution, we created the 3-meal day. And that was the lunch hour was created by industrialization, when they had to create a time when people could get together and eat. We didn't have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You had breakfast and you had dinner, and maybe you had something during the day. But if you went out and ate in the fields, you didn't stop in the middle of the day and go to Subway sandwiches. You pushed through and you got the fields done. So there were times when we didn't say, oh, it's noon, what are we eating? And we've gotten used to like, oh, it's 5, where's my dinner? And I've noticed on days when I intermittent fast and I let go of the time parameters and I don't look at a clock all the time, you get far more in touch with what real time is. And the other thing I'm bombarded with is 24/7 media, all about food, all about food. Food Network, food competition shows. You can't even watch the news in the morning without some kind of food segment with somebody doing food, cooking food. And then there's food advertising, all looking very delicious and everything. And your body, if it's watching food and it's really delicious, it becomes like porn for your brain. When you're dieting, it's like, bite that burger, just like you get into watching that, and your mind, you start salivating, looking at, diners, drive-ins, and dives, and Guy Fieri has the burger dripping down his arm, and you're just like, oh, that looks so good, take another bite, right? You live vicariously through Guy Fieri and his massive food amounts that he consumes with all those big, gorgeous meals that look delicious. Well, your body sees that, and just like the perception of fear, right, and the fight or flight thing and the perception of danger, it's the perception of, oh, you're about to eat. You start salivating. You start, even just thinking about your favorite meal can make you salivate, right? And it's actually one of the things that they do. I have Sjogren's disease, which is one of my autoimmune diseases I have, and it causes dry mouth and all kinds of things. And one of the tips that people use to help saliva come back to your mouth is to picture your favorite meal. Picture sitting down to a big greasy burger or whatever, a big milkshake or whatever it is for you that really rings your bell, a box of truffles or a basket of fries or whatever is your yum food is. You picture it and you start salivating. It's a natural thing that we do. But the salivating is started by the hormonal sequence. It's called hormonic sequence, which is like harmonic but with an O, hormonic. And it is the domino effect of, oh, I'm going to have food, got to salivate, got to wet the esophagus, got to kick off some insulin, got to get everything ready because food is coming, and then you don't eat. So your body says, well, where's the food? Why didn't I eat? And it kicks off ghrelin, it kicks off, all kinds of hormones that drive you into eating. We're such a foodie culture now that I went out to dinner last night with my mentor. She was very nice. She drove all the way up to Portland to take me out to an amazing dinner at Portland City Grill. Beautiful place. And the smells, everything, you're like primed for a great meal. But wouldn't you know it, both of us whipped out our phones. When the food came to the table, it's like, it didn't happen unless you took a picture. You know what I mean? It's like, there's that whole posting your pictures and posting on Facebook and posting on Instagram and everything. And it's just insanity that our lives are inundated with everything about food. And it didn't used to be that way. We did not go from pillar to post on the food spectrum and be constantly looking at foods and watching ads and everything about food. So that has a big effect. Why it isn't such a straight and narrow, simple path of there's hormones and you eat. You eat because you're hungry and you're hungry with these hormones. So there's a bigger picture of why you're feeling the way you're feeling, and you are not alone. Everybody on the planet feels that way. So what does it mean to honor your hunger? Being a primal urge that you have, how do you honor it? What does that mean? Does it mean to eat anything and everything you want all the time? No. Does it mean that you only eat when you're hungry? No. Diet culture and diet mentality tells you, for instance, that if you follow XYZ, then that's how you truly honor your hunger, is if you follow this no carbs or high carbs or no sugar or vegan or paleo or whatever the program is, that if you do that XYZ thing, that's the way you honor your hunger. But that's not true. Honoring hunger simply means that you become mindful about your body's signals. You become mindful and in touch and curious about the current state of what's happening right now in your body. Not bringing in any emotion into it, not bringing the clock into it, not bringing any of those outside forces into that sense of hunger, but really taking, a look at, here's hunger, okay, you're taking a look at it, and you're examining it, and you're curious about it. I'm hungry. Okay, so, and the kind of questions that brings up are all valid and important. And it's very tricky to learn. And it's hard to reject that diet mentality that if you follow whatever it is some guru's telling you, or what I'm telling you, or what somebody's telling you, that is honoring your biology. It's honoring your hunger. And it's hard to reject that. I know, because we hold on to those things and those ideas as a way of hopefully getting healthy. It's with the best of intentions that you want to be healthy. Nobody goes on a diet willy-nilly. I mean, we go on it because we're not healthy, or we want more vitality in our lives, or we want to be around to play with our children and grandchildren, or we just want to feel sexy in a pair of jeans. There's every possible why and every possible reason for why we want to lose weight, and all of those are valid. But the diet mentality that's out there in the industry that I'm part of would have you believe that you can't trust your own body. because your body doesn't know better. You have to be in control of your body. Your body's out of control. But your body really does. Our bodies really do know what they're doing. And honoring your hunger means being mindful in that moment and really listening to your body about what it needs, why it needs it, how much it needs, and determining whether you're really hungry or not, or there's something else at play. And that takes time to develop that habit, and it will lead you to food freedom. It will lead you to a way of living your life so you're not controlled by the little men with levers up in your brain, or by the bombarding of 24/7 social media and television and 24-hour cycles of everything, and 10,000 channels on cable, all giving advertisements, shows, scenes, food placements, everything, food, 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 food all the time. And it's kind of a contradiction because they're pushing food, like, drug pushers are pushing food on us 24/7, at the same time saying, oh, you can't have it. No, you're dieting. Here's this yummy thing. Oh, no, you can't have that because you need to diet because you don't look like XYZ model. So you have to follow this program and deny yourself. So there's all kinds of head games that go on in the diet industry that I'm not in for. But your body really does know what it needs to do. And part of becoming mindful is getting in touch and honoring those things that are given within us as our biology, and with our higher thinking capabilities as humans. We don't just have to hungry, eat, procreation, sex. We are far more complicated creatures that can nuance this and look at it, take a step back and take a beat. Not one of us is actually starving, and if we don't eat right now, we're going to drop and fall on the floor. We have that moment to take a beat and really think about what's going on. So that's a type of intuitive eating. So that's what we're talking about, honoring your hunger, is getting in touch with your intuitive ability to know what you're supposed to eat, when you're supposed to eat, and if you're supposed to eat it all, and am I hungry? So the question is, what does it mean to honor your hunger? And it means honoring your biological hunger, your actual internal mechanisms. It's helping your body learn and understand that it'll always have access to food. As modern, Western, first world country humans, we will always have access to food. Rarely, I should say, in the United States is someone where they can't get to food. There are a lot of people who don't have that privilege in this country. There's a lot of people who suffer with actual hunger and actual starvation, and there are food deserts in this country where people can't access good food in a lot of places in the United States, and there are a lot of children that go to sleep unfortunately hungry, and this pandemic we've been in hasn't helped that at all. But I'm talking about you and me, and how grateful we are that we are in a place where we don't have to worry about our access to food. We've got that access to food. We're good with that. So it's not necessarily that your body's saying, there's no food, we need more food. We're being fed consistently and constantly. But once you get in touch with this intuitive eating, dieting is over forever. It really is a 4-letter word. And there's a reason why I say, stop dieting. Optimize your health and stop dieting. It's because whether you're doing it to get healthy, to get thin, or whatever your reason, dieting is starving your body, not honoring your hunger, not honoring your biological needs, and not giving it the wonderful fuel it needs to have vitality. I took out pictures of me from 2001, so exactly 20 years ago, when I turned 39. I turned 59 on Friday. And I looked at portraits, actual portraits I had done when I was 39. And I'm telling you, I looked older in those pictures. I was frenetically just dieting to, diet just to diet. and I didn't look well. And my autoimmune disease was not happy. And when I learned to honor my biological needs, give my body what it needs, how it needs it, when it needs it, and being mindful of all of that, really was a game changer for my entire life. I will have this freedom to enjoy whatever food I want to have, whenever I want to have it, and be truly in touch at a primal level with honoring my biological processes. So, and that's what I want for you. And if that's something you would want to have, let me know in the comments, and I'd be happy to reach out to you and talk to you about how you feel about your hunger levels, what you struggle with, and all of that. I'd be happy to pick up the phone and talk to you about that and see how I might be able to help you straighten that out and get some food freedom going for yourself. So, the key to being able to honor your hunger is to keep your body fed at all times, but not just by anything, but biologically fed with adequate food that's not only adequate portions, of course, but adequate nutritionally. That's you're getting nutritionally dense foods that your body truly can feed on for a long time, that aren't just carb ridden, but they're actually full of fats, nutrients, minerals, vitamins, that you should be able to not have to take supplements or that many supplements and truly get everything that you need from the food that you eat. You shouldn't be eating empty calories and supplementing. That is not a way to treat your body. Your systems are not going to function well if you treat it like that. It's not honoring your body. So having adequate energy does not necessarily mean having carbohydrate energy. It doesn't have to be carbs. It could be fat and fat adaptation, but that's a whole other discussion about carb versus fat adaptation. We've touched on it lightly, but that's not what this discussion is about. So when I say getting adequate energy, it doesn't mean necessarily having carbs. So if you're not getting enough to eat and you're not getting enough nutrients in your food, it's going to trigger a primal drive to overeat. So even if you're eating a lot of empty calories, you are still going to be constantly overeating and not being like, I don't know why I did, but I just had to eat that entire. Did you ever get to something and if you didn't finish that whole thing, you were just going to keel over and your body really, there must have been something in that I really wanted. Well, there is. There's nutrients, because a lot of the way that we were taught to eat starting in the late 60s and early 70s and the 80s and the 90s with that crazy new pyramid really did not set us on a course of being nutrient fed. And it left our bodies hungry for nutrients. That's why you might be starving. So if you've ever had, there must have been something in there I needed. Like it really tasted good. I had to eat that entire ribeye steak or whatever it was. Then you needed protein. Then you needed saturated fat. Then there's something in there that you really needed. Your body's very smart. It's going to tell you what you need. So once you reach the point of excessive hunger, okay, so you've not been feeding yourself well or enough, it kicks off your primal drive to overeat. So once you reach that moment of excessive hunger, all intentions of moderate and conscious eating are out the window. And you become hangry, that hungry, angry, you're just like, you're ready to tear someone's face off and broil it. You're just like, give me food. You just turn into this angry monster. There's even a Snickers commercial on TV where they have someone turn into this horrible mafia person or something. It's like, you're not yourself without a Snickers. And they give the guy, you must be hangry. And they give him a Snickers bar. And once he takes a few bites, like, oh, I feel so much better. It's, oh, you're yourself again. That's not untrue. And it's actually what it feels like. And you're giving your body those fast-burning carbs that really get into your system really quickly. And yeah, maybe that's what your body wanted. But maybe it's not what you should have had, is a bunch of candy. But you're not going to also sit there when you're hungry and it's like, give me some broccoli. There has to be some satiety and some yumminess about the food that you're having too. But learning to honor this first biological signal of really being ravenous sets the stage for rebuilding trust with yourself and food. So That's why I preach the primal doctrine of satiety. You have to eat to satiety. You have to get to that level of being satiated. Also, starving yourself triggers that fight or flight response that we talked about earlier. All the ghrelin releases, and you're hungry, and then the cortisol kicks off more ghrelin, and leptin never ever kicks in, and then fat is stored. That's not what you wanted to have happen, but if you're not eating to satiety, that's what's going to happen. So there's an old saying that says, a dieting body is a starving body. And that's true, which is why I talk about the program being the no diet, never starving. And when your body doesn't get enough food or energy, it goes into that primal and powerful biological urge and overdrive that causes you to have cravings and to binge, and we've talked about that, in order to get the energy it needs. So the biological fear of hunger and starvation is so ingrained in us and so intense that we oftentimes don't have control over what we actually need so that we don't overeat. It's as old as time in all creatures that we need to make meat. It's not that you don't have willpower, and I want to drive this home. A lot of people who are overweight feel there's something wrong with them, or they're weak people, or they're weak-minded, or they don't know how to deal with their feelings of guilt, that they're just weak, horrible people that don't have any willpower. They're not as strong and wonderful as this thin person over here who doesn't overeat like they do. But it's not that you don't have the willpower or that you failed somehow. You didn't. It's simply that your biological need that your body has for food, it just needs it to function. And so what if you feel hungry all the time or aren't sure, even if you know what hunger feels like? So what if that's what the deal is? Well, intuitive eating can help you figure out all the experiences of biological hunger. So what is it to experience biological hunger? So intuitive eating, which is a way of honoring your hunger and honoring those biological urges, is becoming a little bit more in tune with the inner voice, the intuitive voice of our approach to food. So not being controlled by the smell of walking by Cinnabon and it just like come in and have this. They know what they're doing. They pump that smell. That is actually thrown by a fan out an event out into the courtyard so that you come floating over to them and have their Cinnabons. It really is a tactic that they use. But your own intuitive sense of what you need is very strong, and you need to honor that. And it starts by simply listening. And that in and of itself and becoming a habit takes time. And everybody's body is different. Every single body is completely different. So every person will experience hunger differently. So when you feel hunger, here are some real rubber hits the road steps that you can take to help start this process. We've been talking about what hunger is and what intuitive eating is, and that all the overeating urges are not your fault, and the harmonic sequence and all of those things. But here are some questions, and there are 7 that you need to look at, to ask. Am I hungry? So you start off with, am I hungry? Am I hungry enough for a meal, or do I just need a snack? So number 1 is, am I hungry? And number 2 is, am I hungry enough for a meal or just for a snack? Am I hungry or just thirsty is number 3. So am I hungry? Am I hungry enough for a whole meal or just for a snack? That's a big one. That's you're going to the refrigerator and you're standing there letting all the cold air out. Your mother's yelling at you when you're a kid and you're like, I just want a little something. If you don't want a whole meal, you are not hungry. There's something else going on, or you're bored or something, or stressed. That's not hunger. If you want a meal, you're hungry. So that's an answer. Am I hungry or thirsty? Because the same feelings for hunger are the feelings for thirst. Maybe you could use a big glass of water, not to fill up your stomach and to do that whole thing with your hormones to get you to feel full for a moment and break that cycle, but truly because being thirsty feels a lot like being hungry, and we're not in touch with that. So maybe that's something. So am I hungry? Am I hungry enough for a meal or just for a snack? And am I just thirsty? Number 4, am I bored, stressed, anxious, fill in the blank, sick, needing a little comfort food? Did I have a bad day? Am I feeling fill in the blank? Now, that's very important to look at those things. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But that's one of the things, say, am I just kind of reflexively eating? Is it just a habit that when I'm feeling this way, I put something in my mouth? And when you think about the kind of things you eat when you are needing comfort food, there's actually a type of food, comfort food. So when you need comfort, there's comfort food. And what is the number one thing in comfort food? Carbs. And why are there carbs? Because they metabolize right away. They're that fast fuel that gets into you and gives you some pep in your step. There's a reason why comfort food is called comfort food and why it really is a true thing. It's not a fake thing. There really is food that will comfort you more than other foods. Now that will change. I found that people who've been eating the way I've been eating for a long time, I get comfort from things that you wouldn't even believe me if I told you. It has nothing to do with chocolate baked goods or breads, or it's none of that anymore. I get comfort from very different things. Now, would I love to womp into a big chicken pot pie? Absolutely. That would be wonderful. Would it be smart to do, and would I feel good afterwards? Would I be sick afterwards? Yes, and that will keep me from doing that. But of course that's delicious. It's got everything the heart could desire as far as I'm concerned. A nice gravy filled, see, my mouth is watering. I'm like, it sounds so good. Nobody, you are not kidding. Chicken pot pie, don't get carried away. So are you hungry enough or for a meal or snack? Are you thirsty? Are you just bored, stressed, anguished, whatever? And the other one, is it because of the time? Is it because it's noon, 5 o'clock coffee hour, morning? Jane from accounting brings in bagels on Thursdays at this time and I have to go over and get them. Are you being controlled by an external circumstance of something to do with time? After an entire lifetime of breakfast, lunch, and dinner at 7 a.m., noon, and 5 p.m., or whatever your timing is, it hits noon, you start going, I'm a little peckish. I could really use something. And all it is your body knowing it's noon. And on go the ghrelin, on go the need to eat, on go the I haven't had anythings, and you start on the hunt looking for food. On the days I have intermittent fasting, it is so easy for me to ignore the clock. I put all clocks away. I take my wristwatch off or my Fitbit off. I just ignore time completely. And I'm not aware of what time it is and having those responses. It's really an amazing, freeing thing. I get so much done on my fasting days. It's not funny. And then there's a couple biological signs, which are number 6 and 7. Number 6 would be after you've asked yourself all those questions about time and social circumstances and emotions and how hungry you are and everything. There's also, is my tummy grumbling? So that kind of, and there's a lot of reasons why tummies grumble. It's not always when you're hungry, although that is one that we're familiar with, that empty feeling in our stomach. But if we're having severe growling, the way like someone on the phone can hear your stomach growling, that's something else altogether called SIBO, that's small intestine bacterial overgrowth, SIBO. Look it up. Dr. Eric Berg does a wonderful write-up on SIBO and what that is, and it has to do with your gut health. So small intestine bacterial overgrowth causes massive stomach grumbling. But that empty feeling, that like the walls of your stomach are rubbing together, feeling like I'm hungry, I'm empty, there's that sensation. And then there's also the sensation that we have talked about salivating. That happens when you're hungry. Your body starts preparing to be able to swallow, to masticate the food, and to be able to break it down. And saliva has all kinds of enzymes and everything in it to help you break down that food. So you're going to start salivating when it gets to be when you're really hungry. So those are really good markers for ways to kind of like put the brakes on and say all of those things. So um, I will put those 7 things also into the notes of the post. I will edit the post and I will put those 7 signs of hunger in there for you. So you will have those. So most of those questions will help you determine the source and sensation of the compulsion of eating itself. And then you need to give yourself some time to answer those questions. You know, if you're hungry, you need to give yourself a little time. It's not instantaneous. You start looking, you take a minute and you pause and you ask yourself those questions, and then you listen to what your body's response is to it. If you determine that you're not really hungry and your hunger level isn't high enough to really want you to eat anything but just a snack or treats, then step back, come back later at a later time when you are. There's no law that says you have to eat lunch at noon. Maybe you eat it at 2 in the afternoon when you're really hungry. And there's nothing wrong with recognizing that you aren't really hungry and walking away. It's actually very healthy. Your body needs time in between from the last bite of food from one meal to the first bite of food in the next meal. It needs a period of time to digest, clear out the system, get everything ready for the next meal. Because if you're putting food on top of food on top of food on top of food, your body's just pumping out insulin 24/7, and it's really not metabolically a healthy thing. So then you might ask yourself, well, what about those times, Sheila, when I don't experience physical symptoms, but I still feel hungry? Okay. That number 6 and 7, I still feel hungry, but I don't have those symptoms, but I still sense that I am hungry. That's a good question. And there are other voices of hunger, and it's important to be aware of them. So honoring your hunger, this concept still might seem a little weird to you that you're honoring something that's just a compulsion, but I need to explain why it's not part of the diet mantra. And you can eat when you're not hungry. You're physically capable. Absolutely go ahead and eat when you're not hungry. You're not going to lose weight or be metabolically healthy, but there's nothing keeping you from doing that. And only eating when you're honoring your hunger is not always realistic. You have to give yourself a little bit of self-compassion about it, not be, far too strict on yourself and be too OCD about it. But when you're trying to get control out of control hunger, or trying to get back in touch with what really is going on with your body in regaining your vitality and optimizing your health or rebooting your health, then you really need to be in touch with that. But you know what? You don't have to do it every single meal, every single time. Don't be too hard on yourself. And if you're only going to eat when you're hungry, then wanting to eat in a social gathering and doing so would make you feel guilty, disobedient, like a failure, and that's not the point either. You have to be able to eat in social situations or when other humans are eating. When you're at work, you can't say, everybody else has a 12 to 1 lunch break, but I'm going to take mine at 2:30. No, you're going to have to eat in the 12 to 1 lunch break in some jobs. Some people are flight attendants and they have to eat in the middle of the night when they're not hungry, but that's their break, because if they don't get anything until they're off the plane. So the point of honoring your hunger is eating when you're hungry, but not starving yourself or over-controlling yourself, which also then creates stress, and then you're in that sequence again where the hormones are firing off, and you don't want that. So don't cause stress. Don't do this to the point of causing stress. And it's also about being okay with some other types of hunger, like taste hunger. Taste hunger goes along with smell hunger, and that is like the Cinnabon example I gave. That's smell or taste hunger. That's like, you're not hungry, but oh boy, that smells good. And when something simply sounds good, you're watching Food Network, you're listening to somebody talk about food, that can also be a very strong hunger that's a valid hunger. It's not always, am I hungry? But there is taste and smell hunger. It does exist. Can you resist it? Is it okay to have it? Kind of depends on what it is and what your personal nutrition goals are. But no one's going to toss you in jail for having a Krispy Kreme. In fact, when you drive past Krispy Kreme, they know what they're doing. They put this big sign out that says hot and ready. Hot and ready is what they put out when they have a brand new batch. It goes flashing out on the freeway, Krispy Kreme, hot and ready, and people, because they know that's going to be delicious. A hot and ready donut? Yes, please. But it's not the most healthy thing to eat, and if you're avoiding carbs, maybe you want to work on resisting that temptation. But that's an example of smell and taste hunger. You don't have to actually put it in your mouth to taste it. It's just the thought of tasting that makes you feel that way. Or you're at a wedding reception and you're waiting to join the celebration, and you're eating some cake and you're at the buffet line. It's like there are reasons why you have that taste hunger. There's something that kicks in that way. But you don't have to eat, but you may want to, and that's okay. It's not a violation. You're not in failure for wanting something that sounds good. And you just have to be true to your own code of what it is you want to do with your health. But there's nothing wrong with these other ways of feeling hungry. Another one is practical hunger. So how many times have you gone to a movie or a concert and a play, and you weren't hungry when you went, but in the middle of the play or in the middle of the movie, you're starving, and you're only and you can't think of anything but getting that food? Well, first of all, it might be a sign that you're not fat adapted, if that's something that you're trying for, that you're having a lot of carbs because they burn up very quickly, and you may have even had something before you left, but it burns up so fast that you're hungry in the middle of the movie that's only a few hours after you ate. So that's something to consider, but that's called practical hunger. So sometimes you may not be hungry before doing something, but having a snack or a small meal before starting, so that might be a good strategy. So before you go, have something satiating. Don't have a carb before you go. If you're going to go to a long event, like we used to go to the Hollywood Bowl when I lived in Los Angeles, and that's like a whole thing. And if you don't have one, if you've never been there, people bring picnic baskets and everything, do this whole foodie event. But sometimes you're going and you don't want to make it a big eating event. You just want to go and watch us. And these are very long concerts. It takes a long time to get there. You hike way in from where the parking is, and everybody's kind of in a festival mood. It's wonderful. And you could be gone from your house for 8 or 10 hours going to the Hollywood Bowl. In that case, you might want to eat something really filling, satiating, have a lot of saturated fat, and something that's a good bacon and egg breakfast, something that stick to your ribs thing your grandma used to talk about. Have something stick to your ribs. It holds true. Get something that really sticks around for a while, something with good fat content, good amount of protein, that will hold you through this other event, not make you hangry and make you miss half of what you paid for tickets to the Hollywood Bowl or whatever it is. A good example is one of my clients contacted me a couple of weeks ago and said, "What should I do?" I said, "What's going on?" And she said, "I just got back from working out." I looked at my watch. It was 6 for me. She's in Central Standard Time. And she said, "Yeah, it's 8 o'clock. I just got back from working out, and I go to bed at 10 o'clock, and I'm not hungry. Should I eat?" Well, that's an example of practical hunger. You're going to have to eat something before you go to bed, or you'll wake up in the middle of the night, or you'll end up eating at 11 at night. You'll be staying up late because you're starving, because you haven't eaten since breakfast or whatever. So the workout got her past that time, but she had to eat something. I said, get something that's high in protein, no carbs, small portion, something that's real nutrient dense for you to have, that will help you feel satisfied, satiated, keep you from getting hunger all night until you break your fast tomorrow. I think her time was like 11 or something like that, 11 a.m. And another example of practical hunger could be eating something before going on this long bicycle ride workout that she did. So maybe or I think maybe she went to the gym, I don't know, whatever it was. So before you go and work out, maybe you have something then. And you have something full of protein, something that will stick to your ribs, so that when you come home, you're not You're going to be hungry before you go to bed because you know you're going to get home late. And it's never a good idea to eat before you go to bed, just on so many levels. So that's practical hunger. Then there's emotional hunger. That's something we're all familiar with. You're eating to quench uncomfortable feelings. And everybody on the planet has done it. Everybody does it. But when you identify biological hunger, it makes it easy to be able to understand why you're feeling that you need to eat. So it's all those things that we talked about, like maybe it's that hour, maybe it's, maybe is there another way? Some people need to eat something just to relax. It's their drug of choice to relax. So there are people that go and hide from the kids and eat some chocolate, in the pantry, and that's not healthy. I'm not talking about that, but I'm just saying some people just need a little something to eat to relax. And if this makes you feel at peace, knock yourself out. Just know there's a consequence for eating off program if you're following a program. Again, it depends on what your goals are and whatever program you're on. But it might be a good idea in that moment to also be mindful when you're doing emotional eating. You will have emotional hunger. It doesn't mean you have to eat when you're emotionally hungry. You could have smell or taste related hunger. It doesn't mean you have to eat. I'm not saying those are imperatives, but I'm saying it's a type of hunger. It's not always just, I need to survive, therefore I will eat. We're humans. We have emotions and we eat our emotions sometimes. In fact, it's the number one reason why people pack on weight in the first place, is that we're eating our emotions. We're not dealing with what is there. So something I encourage my clients to do in the mind-body reboot method is called mind-body, because there's a holistic approach that includes the mind and the body working together to make the right decisions to have the best possible optimized health in their efforts. I want my clients optimizing their vitality and laying claim to that again, that's something that's their birthright, to have vitality. And in order to do that, mindfulness comes into play. And we talked about mindfulness and taking a look at the hunger and seeing it objectively with curiosity and kindness. But the other thing is, maybe mindfulness would be good to ask yourself why you need to eat something or a certain type of food when you feel a certain way. When I was really sad, I used to want to have chocolate. That was like, had to have chocolate, good dark chocolate. Even though it was good dark chocolate, you can't have it 24/7, and dark chocolate still has sugar in it. It's not sugar-free. So if you have enough of it, you're putting tons of sugar in your body. And milk chocolate actually has less sugar than dark chocolate, because dark chocolate is so very bitter on its own. If you've ever had a bite of baking chocolate, you know what I'm talking about. But using mindfulness to get in touch with why. So get with your counselor, get with your health coach, get with your therapist, do some journaling, find out why you're eating when you feel a certain way would be very healthy. It would be a great way to respond to it and to strategize with yourself and brainstorm about maybe some other things that might make you feel at peace other than a piece of pie or a piece of cake. Different kind of piece. I know. I'm doing dad jokes now, so it must be getting tired. How are we doing on time? We have 6 minutes left. I will wrap up. So none of these voices of hunger that we talked about are bad. None of them at all. And when you're mindful about your choices and you identify your biological hunger, your wants, your needs, your desires, you can start by having a healthy relationship with food in more ways than one. That you control it rather than it controlling you. And if you're overweight and you've had emotional eating or overeating or binge eating, it's not your fault. You're not weak or a failure. But you can do something about it. So if you're having any issues having to do with honoring your hunger or feeling like you really need to take control of how you eat or why you eat, please let me know. I will reach out to you and we'll set up a time to go through those things with you and see how I might be of help to you in doing that. So I hope you had a wonderful evening this evening on our Tuesday Night Live on Reboot TV. I'm going to just pop over here and see. Nope, no live questions. So remember, in replay, please ask questions. Let me know. I need help with that. That sounds like me. I do too much emotional eating. I will reach out to you, or you can DM me if you don't want to put it publicly on the Facebook comments. Go ahead and DM me under Sheila Keelty, and I would be happy to help you figure that out. I want everyone to feel the food freedom that I do, to have the intuitive nature and approach to food that allows me truly to make the choices that are wise for my health without being detrimental to my mental health or to my long-term health. So anyway, thank you for joining me on Reboot TV on Tuesday Night Live. We'll see you next week. Take care, everybody. Be well.